Are you in a situationship, in a relationship that you don't quite understand what it is? Thank you so much for joining us on Second Act TV. I want to welcome back Sandy Weiner, the dating coach, relationship expert, communications expert, and the author of Love at Last. Sandy, thanks for giving us your time again today.
Thank you for having me back. And you didn't even point to the book this time in the wrong
No, I
direction.
did a little bit. Yeah. Got that down finally. Sandy, today's topic is fairly new, the term situationship, but it's coming up more and more often. I'm wondering if that's sort of a reflection of the time and of the dating environment out there. But we want to discuss, are you in a situationship, in a relationship that you don't quite understand what it is? When did all that start? How long has situationship been around?
I have a feeling it's been around for a long time. We just keep
Mhm.
finding new words to
New
describe
words,
things
yeah.
that have happened before. But I think when people are non-exclusive in general, but don't really discuss it, and we're kind of seeing each other regularly, and
Mhm.
nobody talks about it. I mean, back in high school, I had a relationship like that. I
Mhm.
think we were exclusive, but we never discussed it
Mhm.
until we were both divorced. And I said, "What was that?" Because I was
Yeah.
in love with you. And he goes, "Yeah, I was in love with you too." I had no idea. So
Yeah.
you could be in a relationship and not know it, but you probably are in a situationship if you haven't defined it and it's not exclusive and you just haven't talked about it, which is
Yeah.
what most people
Well, and
do.
and what it all comes down to really is what you want. That's why we're having this conversation. Why I think it's an important conversation is that what is it that you want? Are you in a relationship that you feel like you're stuck in, and it's just not going anywhere? Which is actually one of the signs that we want to go through. So let's go through some definite signs and see if you can relate to any of this, and what you might want to do about it. Number one, you have your well, you just mentioned it. You haven't defined the relationship. You haven't had the DTR talk. I think we did a segment on that. I'll link to it.
Probably.
Yeah.
DTR. Yes,
Mhm.
that became a thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got to talk about it, especially if
Hmm.
you've been seeing each other regularly for a while. I mean, 3 to 6 months, you haven't
Hmm.
defined, you don't know. I think they're not sleeping with anyone else, but I don't know. I mean, I suggest you have an exclusivity conversation if you're going to sleep with that person before you sleep with that person,
Hmm.
and know your own standards. So
Hmm.
if you want to not be in a situationship, you got to bring this
Yeah.
stuff up early on. But you don't define it obviously on date two, but if you've been seeing each other for a while, you got to talk.
And again, what is it that you want? This one really, in my opinion, it's all about you. Where do you really want to go? And like Sandy said, and if you don't know, if you're just, this is something that is on top of mind, you're just wondering about this every day, have that conversation, which is an awkward conversation to have, can be scary to have, but yeah, it's certainly necessary to do so. Number two here, there's no outside indication that you're a couple, like he hasn't introduced you to his friends. What exactly do we mean by that?
Yeah, again, if you've been together for a while and he doesn't call you his girlfriend and he doesn't want to put a label on it and he hasn't introduced you to family or friends and just keeps putting that off. Now, again, this is common when you're just starting to see somebody. But if you've been together for a while, this behavior is situationship behavior.
And I think this really is more prone to for men. I don't know, maybe I'm saying that because I'm a woman and I think of it this way, but women obviously can do the same. Maybe they're hiding the guy, but that's actually, I don't know, that's indicative of a lot of other issues and red flags, I would think.
It could be, or maybe just you haven't talked about it and you haven't said, "I'd love to meet your family." maybe the person was burnt and they have children and they introduce them too early to other people and they
Hmm.
feel that they promised their kids that they wouldn't do that again
Hmm.
until they were in an exclusive relationship. And so they're a little scared to do it. You don't know. You don't know until you've asked, until you've said what your preferences are. And you know,
Hmm.
you said before, this one is about you. It's always about you.
Hmm.
Everything's about you. You know, if you can look at life that way, it really is about what do you want and are you willing to tolerate certain behaviors and are you asking for what you want? Most people, the answer is no.
It's interesting that you just pointed that out because I maybe it's where I was coming from earlier. So I was raised that you always care about the other person, or you always make the man happy, or you just cater to your partner, to your man at every stage of the relationship, which is something I'm over that for the most part, but especially in the beginning. And again, that's why this whole situationship situation I think is interesting that there is such a word that we can now talk about that. Here's another good one. You don't go on real dates. What's a real date and what isn't a real date?
Yes, I was speaking to somebody the other day and she said, "Yeah, I've been seeing this guy and he wants to hang out with me." And
Mm,
he told me he wants to, what are you doing tonight? He wants to hang out with me again. And oh, we went for sushi. And I'm like, are these dates? Or are these hangouts? Because a lot of times you're just hanging out at home, hooking up. And that
mhm,
is not dating, that is just sex. And so if that's what you want,
mhm,
great. If you want courtship and building a relationship and you want to be treated with respect and treat each other as if you're trying to win each other over and get into each other's life more and more, you need to go on some dates. You don't just ease into these kinds of home hangouts. Then you're just saying, I'm okay with very little effort.
I would think, especially at our age, if that's happening, if the hanging out. I mean, I think it's from what I hear, that's something that's very acceptable now among the younger people. They hang out in groups or whatever. You don't really go on dates. But if that's happening at our age, I would certainly pay attention to that. What is the motivation? What is the motivation behind that? Does this person just not want to be alone or want a companion? The whole, again, at our age, and this might be a whole other segment, but the whole companionship versus relationship, I think, becomes top of mind in conversations,
Mm-hmm.
doesn't it?
Yeah, I know people who've had 7-year companionships that actually didn't involve sex and served a purpose for a long time, but then kept them back from having the relationship they want. But the dating thing, I think, is definitely more common with younger people, the not going on dates.
Mm-hmm.
But it happens in our age group a lot too,
Mm-hmm.
especially if you allow it from the beginning. I had a guy I went out with a while ago who, after the first date, texted me the next day and said, What are you doing right now?" And he just wanted me to come over.
Mm-hmm.
And so it would have been a hookup
Mm-hmm.
easily. It could have been on the first date too. That's all he was interested in. And so I wasn't. Now, if I was, it was easy. It would have been easy to fall into that. But
Mm-hmm.
that was really clear. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah. I guess we
busy?
should, yeah, I guess we should say that, situationships are okay. I mean, it could be
Yes.
great. Two people could be happy forever in a situationship, but it's important what you just explained. If that's
Hmm.
not what you want, then
Yeah.
these are huge signs that you are in there, and let's think about whether or not you want to get out. Number 4 here, you're not integrated into their life.
Right. So before we talked about how they don't introduce you to their family or friends, this is more that as a couple, you're not going out together to their favorite places, or you don't visit them at work or meet their colleagues or meet people who are important in their lives. You're just an isolated couple who sees each other alone. So when you're growing into a relationship, the normal trajectory is that you start to expand into each other's worlds. And
Mm-hmm.
if you've been dating for a while and they're not moving towards a deeper, more meaningful relationship, they're not going to integrate you. They're just going to keep
Mm-hmm.
everything kind of secret and quiet, and it's just the two of you. And who knows what they're doing when they're not with you.
Yeah, and again, that could be red flags all over the place for something else, like somebody's married or in a relationship, and so that one is definitely worthy to take a deeper look at. Is, yeah, are you part of their life? Do you even know about their life? So, well, and then the obvious one, the overarching, if you will, the relationship is stagnant, that is just not going anywhere.
And a lot of people stay in these relationships where it's just plateaued really fast. So maybe you see each other every couple of weeks. I spoke to a woman recently and she was like, the guy came back into her life. And the first time she had dated him, he said he wasn't really ready for a relationship. Now he
Mhm.
says he is, but he comes into her life and then she doesn't hear from him in 2 weeks.
Mhm.
And then she says, "What's up with that?" And he's like, "Oh, I'm so sorry." And then he'll show a little more effort, but then disappear again. It's stagnant. It's not moving forward. It's repeating a pattern. So, most relationships, if you really like each other, you're going to start seeing each other more often. You go from seeing each other once a week to several times a week to spending weekends together to becoming a couple, sharing holidays together. You share time together.
Mhm.
If it's stagnant, it's just we see each other whenever. And then
Mhm.
you're always, if you really want more, you are on the other end of this relationship feeling anxious,
Mhm.
wondering when they're going to contact you again, when they're going to be available. It's horrible. It's like if
Mhm.
you have an anxious personality, this is the worst possible
Mhm.
thing for you.
That's a tough one, because especially if you like the person, if you really like this woman or this man, and you want to be with them, so they come around, once a week, twice a week, or like you said, maybe every 3 weeks or whatever, and you just don't want that to end, especially when there isn't necessarily a replacement inside. I think that's where we get lost in this, is when there isn't something else, and we like that person. That could keep us stuck for a long time, can it?
Sure, you want it to be something that it's not, and the other
Mm-hmm.
person is not escalating things, but you also haven't talked about it. For the most
Mm-hmm.
likelihood, you're just sitting around just waiting and
Mm-hmm.
hoping the other person's going to bring stuff up. And that's a recipe for disaster. I think that also, if you are tolerating these highs and lows in relationships, you're really not going into healthy situations.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Your nervous system is dysregulated in these kinds of relationships, and that's not something that is sustainable. It's not. It
Mm-hmm.
might feel exciting when you're with them because you like the in and out quality of the
Mm-hmm.
relationship, but it's so unhealthy. So, I really encourage people to have that DTR conversation. I remember many years ago, I dated somebody, and after about 5 or 6 dates, I realized I just wanted to see him exclusively.
Mm-hmm.
And we never had the DTR conversation because we were both, I assumed, seeing other people. And I wanted to focus on getting to know him better. So that's
Mm-hmm.
all that is. It's not, I think I want to marry you. It's, I just want to talk to you about, hey, I'm really enjoying getting to know you. And I would like to stop seeing other people and just focus on you
Mm-hmm.
to see where this goes. How do you
Mm-hmm.
feel about that? And in my case, he was like, yes. And he ended up ending things with somebody else the next day, but he had plans to see someone. Now I didn't know. I didn't know if he was or
Mm-hmm.
wasn't, but if we didn't have that conversation, he would have
Mm-hmm.
continued seeing other people. And a lot of women are afraid to be the one to initiate that conversation.
Mm-hmm.
He was so happy. So I would say, I would love to hear from the men. How do you feel when a
Yeah.
woman asks you to be exclusive? And if the person says no, then you have your answer and then you can move on. It's clarity. Clarity
Mm-hmm.
is the key.
The other, what popped in my head as you were talking, you have this really great companionship. Where is that fine line, especially at our age? It's just good enough, because let's face it, any long-term relationship eventually ends up as a and it should, you should be friends, you should be companions who like being with each other. And for so many, the sex is out the window too. But I guess you don't want to start that way, and that's what the difference, I guess, between a relationship and a situationship is. Did I just
Yeah.
answer my own question?
I think so. I think if you certainly want to be friends from the start, you want to have great
Mm-hmm.
sex from the start.
Yeah.
You got to start with the foundation of a healthy relationship. If you don't have the foundation, you can't develop it. It's too flimsy.
Well, and like we said, all through, is what is it that you want? And if it is a real relationship, then ask those tough questions, which, yeah, they're tough. I remember when I had the DTR talk with Paul, I was so nervous, up to that. Yeah, it all worked out, but I also know people where it didn't.
Well, I would like to interject here and just say that you just said, well, it didn't work out. And I would like to say that it always works out, because it may not work out the way you wanted it to, but it will work
Mhm.
out for you in the end, because you have learned the truth, because you haven't stayed longer in a relationship that didn't work for you, where the other person wasn't as invested. And it freed you up to go out and look for someone who is more compatible. That's the way I like to look at it, that it's always a good thing. It's always a good idea to have the hard conversation, because even if it doesn't end the way you dreamed it would end, it will put you in a better place.
Great explanation. See, this is why you're the dating coach and I'm the one asking the questions. So hopefully we answered some questions here for people that have exactly the same one. And if you have more questions and would like to get together with Sandy directly, she is a fabulous dating coach. I have all the links in the show notes below, as well as her book right here. We don't talk about your other book hardly anymore, Choice Points in Dating, which is more of a formulaic book of a how to date and find, that special person. And then your latest one, of course, is that inspiration that it's all possible and that it does work out later in life. So, Sandy, thank you so much again for your time. And I look forward to our next conversation on Second Act TV.